Welcome back to my channel. This is Russell with Russell Does Stuff. Well, had lunch, watched a little YouTube, was unable to take a nap today. Maybe I'm attributing to the weather, or sometimes you just can't relax and you have things on your mind, and your mind won't leave you alone until you get them done. So I had something happen to me about, I can't do the math, October last year. And I've touched on this in previous videos, but I haven't told the whole story. I videoed the whole story and then I erased it for a couple reasons. There's still a second part of this that's going on through the court systems. And I didn't want to I don't even know what the word for it is. I didn't want to harp on it, So we all have things that happen to us in our business life and, relationships and stuff. And you don't really know how to share some of that stuff with people, So this is what happened. I hired a guy named Brandon. I was going to this restaurant and I was eating there a couple times a month. They have really good pizza. They're the number one pizza restaurant in this town. And some of the times we were there, we had the different, waiters and stuff waiting on us. And a few handfuls of times we had this one guy named Brandon that waited on us. And he's moving and grooving, and when people are working hard and sweating and taking care of business, that catches my attention. And I said to my wife, I said, this guy's like the only one in here working hard. And she agreed with me. And when somebody waits on you more than one time, they get to know you, recognize you as a customer, And I think he asked me what I did for a living or whatever, and I told him, that I'm going to set this down for a minute so I can concentrate. So I told him that I had a business, and told him what I did. And he said he had the same business, but lost everything in the hurricane or whatever. He said that the hurricane picked up his lawn business and threw it down the street, and then everybody stole his stuff from him. So that was his story. I had no reason to think he was lying or whatever. You trust people. Why are they going to lie about something like that, So he asked me for a job, and I told him no. And then, he asked me for a job again, and I said, nah, I think I gave him my phone number. And the next time I went in there, I said, hey, I didn't hear from you. What's going on? He said someone stole the phone number I gave him. And my antenna was raised a little bit, and I was like, that sounds weird. Why would somebody steal something like that, Who wants my phone number, And I blew it off, and he asked me, again, if he could come work for me. I wasn't rude, but I just was like, no, because I just didn't feel right about him. Nothing, nothing was adding up, So I told him no. So he got grumpy and he stormed off, and I watched his behavior and I was like, wow, this guy may have some anger issues or something, but maybe he's just having a bad day. So a couple weeks went by, maybe a month. We went back into the restaurant. He wasn't there. And one of the waitresses came up to me and said, hey, what's going on with Brandon and you? And I said, what do you mean? She goes, well, he could really use a job. He's got a couple kids and, he's suffering. She goes, would you give him a chance? I said, I'll think about it. So I wrote my phone number down. I gave it to her to give to him. He called me like 3 days later, and I said, hey, why don't you come over to the shop and let's have a talk, get to know each other, introduce each other and stuff. And he did. He came over, and I wrote up some things on that whiteboard that you've seen in some of my past videos. And he asked me for a job. I said, all right, well, let's figure out how we can make that happen. I told him I'm only working 3 days a week, 6 hours a day. Okay. But we need to get some more customers. All right. Because in order to bring Brandon on, we're going to have to get customers on board so that we can offset his paycheck, And I showed him, I told him a little bit about me and my organization and how I run things and stuff. And so we started writing on the board, some goals and stuff. And I said, let me know, how much you need to make a month, and, we'll figure out, what kind of customers we need to get. And we'll just start building a route for you so that in April you can break out on your own and have your own route. Not being your own business owner, but working for me in that kind of a capacity, all right? And I said maybe eventually down the road, partnership or something, or, maybe buy me out, or, whatever. I wasn't showing all my cards. I wasn't going to tell him, hey, I'm looking for somebody to hand the business over to, or buy it off of me, or become, a partner in it. He didn't know that. The only way he's going to know that is if he watches this video. So, meeting went well. Made him a couple hot dogs. Asked him to write some goals down, and come back in a couple days, and I'll have more of a plan put together. So 2 days went by. I think it was, he had like a Wednesday or something off, and he came over, and I wrote some more things on that whiteboard. He had his goals wrote down, and he wanted to negotiate money. I said, this is what I'll do. I'll let you mow one of my accounts, all right? You're working for me, okay? And I'll let you mow one of my accounts, and I'll pay you to do it, okay? He was like, you really? I said, yeah. I said, and then you need training, which he lied about his training. He didn't know what he was doing. He told me he was really good at this type of work, and I found out he wasn't. So I said, look, you have Monday off from the pizza restaurant. Why don't you just get here in the morning and ride with me, and I'll pay you to ride with me. And he's like, all right, good. He was always late. He never got here on time. He was showing signs of somebody who didn't care. And I thought, all right, I'm just gonna roll with it. And if he's late, great. Okay, if he's late a lot, maybe I'll leave him one morning and try to, teach him a lesson or whatever, So I was taking him to work with me. And I was trying to see what he knew and what he didn't know, because I was going to have him start working on one of my large accounts. And I needed to know, I needed trust, If you're going to go to one of my accounts, I need to know, that you're going to do a good job, and then you're going to be trained right, and you're going to know what the boss of that place wants, etc., So he was getting paid to ride with me, and when you ride with somebody, you get to know a little bit about them, I realized that he lied a lot about everything. Everything was everyone else's fault, and he never took responsibility for anything that he did, So, and I just, all right, maybe this guy's just nervous or whatever, but he found comfort in lying. I've been around a lot of liars before in my life. And this guy lied about everything. And he couldn't keep track of his lies. One thing about lying is you have to leave breadcrumbs behind you so that you can keep your lies straight. So I always say never lie, because the truth is easier to remember than lies, because lies are fabricated stories. And the reason he was late was because school buses and this and that, and his air conditioner broke at his house, which is probably true. But when you've gone through a bunch of lies as excuses for being late somewhere, and I told him, you're going to eventually have a real reason to be late, and no one's going to believe you. You're going to have no more credibility. So, we've all white lied to our boss and said, hey, I don't feel good, because, you'd been out drinking or chasing the moonlight, We've all been there. We've all lied and said white lies to our bosses. But his white lies weren't white lies. They were real hardcore solid lies, So maybe his air conditioner did break. I don't know. So one morning he was late. Like real late. And I just left. I had enough of it. I was going to see if I could teach him a lesson and leave. So I did. He calls me up. Where are you at? I says, I got things to do, man. I got jobs, people waiting on me. I'm trying to be responsible. And he got mad at me, and I gave him a little bit of tough Russell back, some tough love from Russell back. And I told him, go home. Go home and think about what you really want to do with your life, because you're messing with my life, and I'm not happy right now, all right? I'm trying to invest in you so you can invest in yourself and get your situation back on track, He didn't go home. He went to one of my big accounts and started doing the maintenance there. And I called him up and I was like, what are you doing? I said, go home. He goes, no. And started lying and arguing with me and stuff. And it's all right. I said, just go home. Please do not do anything on this account because you don't know what you're doing. You're going to get me in trouble, you know. So he left. He went home. So the following Wednesday, my memory serves me, he came back over to the shop, and he promised he was going to stop being late and all that, and he was going to listen because he wanted to learn now. Finally, he decided he wants to learn. So I said, look, we need to get some accounts. So I showed him how to get accounts. I did what I showed in one of my videos in front of him. I said, go give me my phone. I made a cold call, and I got an account. And we started doing tree work and stuff for this account. It was paying good money. He couldn't believe it. He's like, how did you do that? I said, because that's how I started my business. So I already have some experience getting accounts because I've been there. And, you know, it felt good to show somebody else one of my ways of getting customers. Most people think you're full of beep beep, you know. And I showed them that I wasn't full of beep beep, you know. So we started working for this new customer. I had to send him over all my credentials and comp and insurance and all that stuff. Most companies don't have all the paperwork. So if you've got your paperwork, you can get in with some of these places and they'll try you out. They'll trust you once. And make sure you don't disappoint them. This customer was calling me over and over and over and emailing me tons of estimates. Now, granted, a bunch of them I didn't get, but a majority of them I did. And this was benefiting Brandon because I did something I never had ever done with an employee. I was splitting the jobs with him minus my costs. So another week went by. He worked with me Monday, went to the big account. I'm sure as rain, he got there super late because I was in touch with him. And it was like 2 o'clock, and I said, we normally get to that account at 7. Why is it taking you forever to do this account? And he lied to me. He's like, oh, I've just been taking my time and, you know, whatever and stuff. And I knew that was a lie. So I'm at the shop working on some stuff, working on a Jeep or something. I get a phone call from the bank. And I didn't answer the phone. I thought it was telemarketer or something, you know. And it rang again. And I didn't answer it. I thought it was spam or something. And then finally, I'm like, all right, I'll answer it. I answered it. It was my bank. They said, Mr. Beep, 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 Russell does stuff. I'm just like, yeah, that's me. And they said, we've got some guy in here named Brandon trying to cash a check. And I said, all right, yeah, it's his check. He earned it, you know. I said, go ahead and cash it. And she goes, well, you don't understand. The check's already been cashed. I said, well, if it hasn't been cashed, just give him the money. You know, if there's a problem or something, and obviously he has the check, you know, cash it. And we hung up. I get another phone call. It's the bank manager this time. Hi, Mr. Beep Beep. Russell does stuff. I said, hey, what's going on? He goes, this guy's been in here for an hour. He's angry. His wife's angry. They're mad. And I go, what's going on? If he's trying to cash a check, cash it. He goes, you don't understand. He's already cashed the check. You know, you take a picture of a check with your phone and you do it through your phone or whatever. Well, he did that. And then he took the check to the bank and tried to get them to cash it twice. And by this time, I'm like, I said, just send him to the house and I'll give him money. I'll give him cash for it. If he's having problems trying to get money with that check, just have him come to the house and I'll give it to him. So he leaves the bank all mad and stuff. They called me back and told me he left. And they said, look, he's trying to do something funny. It's called check cutting. I asked the guy what I should do, the bank manager. He said, call the police. So before I called the police, I called him, Brandon. And I was like, he had my mower and my equipment, some other stuff. I called him up and I said, hey, why don't you come to the shop and I'll give you the money, and then we'll figure out this check thing later. And I said, what's going on? He goes, they won't cash the check. And I said, well, why don't you call your wife and ask her if she accidentally cashed it. He goes, well, when I get home, I will. Well, I knew that she was with him because the bank told me that he was there with her. So he was lying to me about being with her. I've never met her before. All I know is Brandon's the guy who gave me a hug and said God put me in his life. All right. So he wouldn't come to the house to get the cash. He said he'll catch up with me on Saturday or whatever. I said, all right, fine. So I called the police and I told them what was going on. Well, all you have to do is just deny. He said, I didn't know the check was already been deposited. All right. So the police said there was nothing they could do. I'm like, all right. I said, he's got all my equipment. And he's like, nothing we can do. Mr. Russell does stuff. And I said, all right, I'm at a loss here. So now I'm frustrated. I'm pacing the shop, kind of like what I'm doing now. And I call another police department because there's 2 cities involved here. So the police department came out. I told them what was going on. They got him on the phone. They got Brandon on the phone. He answered the phone. He told the cop I gave him everything. That he worked hard for all my stuff and that him and I were in business and all my equipment's his. Cop hung up with Brandon on the phone, came over and told me that due to the nature of our relationship, there was nothing he could do. That it was now a civil matter. And that I would have to take him to court if I wanted my stuff back. So, I'm distraught. I don't know what to do. Just got kicked in the beep. The beep, all right? So the next day I started calling attorneys. I was desperate. This guy's got my $13,000 lawnmower and a bunch of other stuff that I can't mention here because there's the second part of the lawsuit. going on. Nobody would help me. Nobody. And I'm going to do a video about that. I already did one and I erased it. A couple months later, I found somebody that would help me. So earlier when I was having lunch and I was trying to take a nap, the reason I got up and couldn't sleep was because of this. This mower right here is the one he stole from me. He stole a bunch of other stuff too, all my equipment. He stole this mower. Well, he had this mower for a lot of months. And when somebody steals something from you, they're not going to take care of it. I have proof of that. This is the oil that was in it when I got it back. Okay. I went through this mower. I knew he was going to do something to it, but I didn't know what. It's raining again. This gas tank comes out and you can move it to the side. I found this screwdriver in here. One of the hydro fans was broke off. He was running it without a hydro fan. And I thought maybe he would put something in the motor or something. But as far as I can tell, there was just a little bit of metal in the oil, because you do the old rag and the magnet test. All right. So that ain't my screwdriver. So that was bouncing around in there. Because when I got the mower back, I had to go to court and get a court order. Then I had to get the police to meet me out there. And then this wife he has yelled at me the whole time. You know, it was pretty stressful. It ain't my screwdriver. He told the police the mower runs. And it did run. I got it on the trailer and got it back to the house and got a bunch of estimates on fixing it. So, but I needed to run and I needed to move. I need to move it around and stuff. So I had to order hydro fan, hydro reservoir hose and stuff like that, and the hydro oil. I gave it an oil change. I'll probably change the oil again. So I've had it back for about a month or so. And that's what happens when you try to help people, you know. They don't care about you. They don't care about nothing but themselves sometimes, you know. What he was doing was he wanted to go back into business for himself. All right. This mower had 400 hours on it. Now it has 674 hours on it. You can see that. He did a lot of work with my mower. It's no longer worth what it was worth. And I'm speechless, you know. I mean, some people in life are really bad dudes, you know, so you be careful who you help, you know. So I got off the couch today and I'm going to put the hydraulic hose on it, the reservoir hose and the fan, and try to clean it up a little bit so I can move it around and smile, you know. I learned a big lesson. I took a risk. As an entrepreneur, you take risks. And sometimes they pay off and sometimes they don't. This mower here, I had to go out and buy so I could have a backup because he stole one from me. He stole my backup. So I had to buy this. The guy I bought that from lied to me about a bunch of stuff, but I had to fix that. I'm not whining or complaining. I learned something. I learned a valuable lesson. Look at someone's background first before you hire them. He told me he had been in trouble with the law like 20 years ago, just to throw me off the case, you know. I thought, oh, that's a long time ago. You know, you've grown up by, you know, now, and you're a father with kids and stuff, you know. It's my fault for hiring this guy. Got 2 thumbs. It's my fault. I'm blessed to have my mower back. Hopefully I get the other stuff back too, but it's not going to be in the same condition he grabbed it from me in. And I'm going to do a video on that person who helped me get my my mower back. That was step 1. Try to get the mower back first, you know. This guy even went so far as to file a restraining order against me. He wrote some of the craziest stuff you would ever hear on this paper. So the guy that helped me get my mower back helped me with that also. This guy said God brought me into his life and hugged me. I said, no more hugs, because all you get's one. So nobody thought I was going to get this mower back. Nobody, not even the cops. It's really coming down now. Well, this is Russell with Russell Does Stuff. And that's what happens sometimes when you're an entrepreneur and a business owner. Thanks a lot.